Welcome everybody to Story Corner. I've got a story for you today that flips the stereotypical format of heroic boy saves damsel in distress on its head. This story is a historic tale from Scottish borders and it's called Tam Lin. Now our main character is a young lady called Janet, who like all other young ladies is warned to avoid the woods of Carterhaugh. It's a tiny wee place near Selkirk. Now it says something sinister lurked in those woods, something that preyed on innocent girls. Janet wasn't afraid though. Her dad owned all of this land, and he'd even promised it would be hers someday, so this confident, headstrong girl ignored the warnings and strolled peacefully through the woods, picking flowers and quietly singing to herself. Then she felt, more than saw, a shadowy figure appear from nowhere. Spinning around, she was relieved to see it wasn't a wild beast or a monster, it was just a man. Nothing special. This strange character announced himself as Tam Lin, one of the mysterious fairy folk. He demanded to know why Janet would dare to cross his bridge uninvited, or pick his flowers from the ground. But as we already know, Janet wasn't the kind of lady to back down in the face of an arrogant Egypt. Besides, this was her land. She would come and go whenever she chose. In fact, he was the one who should be asking her permission to be there. And like a medieval rom-com, the two fiery main characters who begun this story tearing chunks out of each other soon found out they weren't so different after all. I won't go into too many details about what happened next, but soon after returning home, Janet discovered she was pregnant. She returned to pick flowers from that same spot as before, and when Tam appeared, she explained her situation. Well, fairies and humans rarely have much luck in partnerships, but it turned out that Tam wasn't really a fairy after all. He had once been a mortal man who tumbled from his horse in this very forest a long time ago and had been captured by the Queen of the Fairies. Now, ignoring the rather important situation that Janet had come to share, he explained that every 7 years the fairies have to pay a tithe to hell. That's basically a fairy tax, and the tithe they owned was one soul. For whatever reason, Tam was pretty sure that he was going to be the next one due to be offered to the devil. It was going to happen that night. He pleaded with Janet to save him, help him become mortal again, and he could marry and he could help provide for that child. Well, when the time came, a party of fairies led by the Queen would be riding down the same road that they were standing on, and that would be Janet's chance to act. But it wasn't going to be easy. She'd have to pull him from his horse, catch him in her arms, and then not let him go until exactly the right moment. Well, that night, Janet found herself crouching in the undergrowth, waiting in the darkness, watching the moonlit path, and probably wondering what on earth she had got herself into. But as her mind began to wander, she heard that sound of horses' hooves in the distance. The fairies were coming. She soon spied Tam, riding a white horse, guarded by warriors and led by the Queen of the Fairies herself. And just as they passed, Janet sprang from the bushes, pulled her lover down and held him in her arms. The Queen of the Fairies, her fierce gaze met the young girl's. Suddenly, Janet wasn't holding Tam anymore. It was a snake writhing in her hands, but she didn't let him go. Then she was struggling under the weight of a snarling lion, but still the girl held on. Next, a red-hot poker burned her hands, but she refused to drop it. And lastly, her burden transformed into a smouldering lump of coal. That was the sign Tam had told her about. She launched it into a nearby well. It quenched the fire, and out of the steam came Tam as a man once more. Janet threw a cloak over, and that's it. He was saved. Needless to say, the Queen of the Fairies wasn't too happy about losing her tithe to hell, or her mortal plaything for that matter. But I like to think there was a bit of grudging respect for young Janet. From one strong woman to another. And that's much better than a damsel in distress, right? Sláinte.